3 things founders say to me about a marketing hire that didn't work out. They weren't proactive enough. They kept bringing me things they should have been able to decide themselves. They never really took ownership of it. Now, all 3 of those describe the same thing, and none of them describes a person. They describe somebody who didn't know what they were allowed to decide. And every one of those sentences gets written down as a character trait. It's called decision rights. And in my experience, it's the single most consequential thing missing from a first marketing hire. And it's rarely the thing that appears in the post-mortem afterwards. I mean, nobody writes down, "We never established what they could decide." They write, "Not a good fit," and look for somebody more senior who hits the same wall but faster, because senior people have less patience for it. So let's fix that. What we're covering in this video is what decision rights actually are, why founders find this specific thing so difficult, and what goes on the page. I'm Monique, I run Tate Digital Consulting, and I help SaaS and tech founders work out whether their business can actually make a marketing hire successful before they actually make one. I've got nearly 25 years in marketing. I've worked in several countries on both sides of the hiring desk. I've been the first marketer walking into a business that wasn't ready, and I've been the consultant called in afterwards. This one I've lived from the inside, so I'll be honest with you about that as we go. Let's start with the thing that makes this invisible. So go and look at the job description you wrote for that role. It will tell you in great detail what the person was responsible for. It could be content, campaigns, pipeline, brand, reporting. It could run into like 20 bullet points. Now, find the part that says what they could decide. It's not there, is it? Job specs describe activity and outcomes. They rarely describe authority. And those are not the same thing. Somebody can be accountable for pipeline and not allowed to choose a channel. They could be accountable for brands and unable to sign off a piece of copy. Accountable for growth with no discretionary spend at all. That's not a marketing hire. It's a very expensive pair of hands with a target attached to them. And the gap between what somebody's accountable for and what they're permitted to decide, that's where most first marketing hires quietly fail. In a way that looks from the outside exactly like a performance problem. Now, here's the part that surprises founders the most, and I'd really like you to sit with this one. Most founders believe they've given autonomy because they haven't withheld it. Nobody said no. Nobody set restrictions. You told them to come in and run marketing, and the absence of constraint was meant as freedom. Now, an experienced person joining a new business reads that in precisely the opposite direction. They're doing a risk calculation. Whether or not they'd put it that way, overstepping in month 2, spending money you weren't expecting, changing something you were attached to, making a call that turns out to have been yours, that's expensive to them, and it's hard to come back from. Asking first is cheap. It costs a bit of credibility and 5 minutes of your time. So, in the absence of anything explicit, a sensible person will consistently assume they have less authority than you meant to give them. Undefined decision rights don't default to freedom. They default to waiting. And 3 months later, waiting gets described as a lack of initiative. There's one specific version of this that does more damage than all the rest put together. And it's worth naming because it's very easy to do without realizing. A piece of work gets going. It's visible. It comes up in meetings. It gets shared in updates. Maybe it's presented once. Nobody raises a concern, so it carries on for weeks on that basis. And then it gets stopped. Not adjusted, not redirected, stopped. Because it was fundamentally not what the business needed. Now, think about what the person on the other end of that has just learned. It isn't, I misjudged this. It's something much more corrosive. It's that visible progress and an absence of objection do not add up to approval. That there is no state of affairs in which they can be confident a decision is safe. And once somebody has learned that, they stop proposing new things. Not out of sulkiness, out of accurate risk assessment. The only genuinely safe move left is to do what they've been explicitly told to do and nothing else. Which then gets read as passive or disengagement or somebody who's mentally checked out. Now, I'll be direct with you. I've been on the receiving end of that, and it took me an embarrassingly long time to understand it as a structural failure rather than a personal one. That's rather the point. The person it happens to almost always concludes it was about them. Now, none of this happens because founders are controlling. I mean, some are. But that's not what's driving it. It happens because when you've been doing the marketing yourself, every decision has been yours by default. There's never been any reason to work out which ones actually matter, which are reversible, which need your input, and which, honestly, don't. The question has never had to exist. Your first marketing hire is the first moment it exists, and it turns up exactly when you're stretched, when you're relieved that somebody else is finally picking this up, and you're least inclined to sit down and specify something that feels like bureaucracy. So it doesn't get specified. But then it decides everything. Right, well, the fix, which is far smaller than the problem. So take a page, and on one page, create 3 columns. There'll be about 15 line items. It's not going to be a governance framework, so please don't build an RACI matrix. You'll never look at that again. And in the first column, column 1, decides alone. Right at the top, decides alone. Genuinely alone. So makes the call, gets on with it, tells you afterwards if it's interesting. like, for example, which channels to test, spend up to an agreed threshold, day-to-day copy and content, choosing and briefing freelancers within budget, tooling under a certain cost, the publishing schedule, for example. And then you've got column 2, which is what they need to decide with you. So decide with you at the top. So, for example, that could be brings a recommendation, expects a conversation, but the recommendation carries weight, quarterly priorities, budget allocation across channels, anything that changes how the product is described. Maybe it's campaigns of any real size and what counts as a qualified lead, which by definition needs sales in the room too. And then there's column 3, and that's everything that has to come to you. So it comes to you at the top. So these are yours and everybody knows it. So it could be brand positioning, pricing, anything with legal or contractual exposure, spend above a certain threshold, headcount. 2 things matter more than exactly where you draw those lines. And the first of them is thresholds have to be numbered, not adjectives even. So responsible spend, that's not a decision right. Up to £2,000 a month without asking, now that's a decision right. Every vague boundary gets resolved conservatively by the person with more to lose from it get it wrong. And that is never you. The second one, and this is the one that nearly everybody misses, this cannot be static. A list that never changes is only marginally better than no list at all. If somebody has the same authority in month 9 that they had on day 1, you haven't hired a function. You've hired an executor, and any decent marketer will leave. So put dates on the page. Agree what moves from column 3 to column 2 at 30 days and from column 2 to column 1 at 90 days. Then actually revisit it. Put it in the calendar, because a good intention won't survive a busy quarter. And that does something beyond the practical. It tells a new hire that their current constraints are a starting position, not a verdict on their judgment, which is exactly the reassurance an experienced person needs in a business where they haven't built trust yet. And it's exactly the reassurance almost nobody gets. So, where does that leave you? If your last hire didn't work out and you can't produce a document showing what they were allowed to decide, then you don't know yet whether it was a people problem. That's uncomfortable, but it's also useful, because I picked the wrong person gives you nothing to change, gives you nothing to work on. And this takes an afternoon. And the return on that afternoon is completely disproportionate. A marketer with clear authority starts moving in week 1 instead of spending their first quarter finding the edges by bumping into them. Same person, same salary, several months of difference. It also gives you the thing you were actually trying to buy when you decided to hire somebody. Not more output, the ability to stop being the point that every marketing decision has to pass through. That was always the goal. Decision rights are how you get there. If you haven't seen it yet, the companion to this one is 3 signs that your last hire failed for condition reasons rather than people reasons. All 3 of which you can check yourself today. It's on the screen now, and this video is really the cause underneath sign 3. And there's a free marketing readiness assessment linked below and pinned in the comments. It scores you across the 5 areas that decide whether a marketing hire works, and decision rights is one of them. Thank you for watching. See you next time.